Hey, what's going on? Luke here. And last year, the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles had a terrible start to the year. Tom Trbojevic was out injured. I tipped them for the wooden spoon, and they looked like a wooden spoon side. Fast forward to the end of the season, and they were a top 4 side. You could argue that they were sort of a chance to win the premiership. I know they got absolutely pummeled in the finals pretty much, but they were a threat in everybody's eyes. Now we fast forward again to 2022, and it feels like we're in a very similar situation, but a very different situation. Now Manly find themselves sitting on the bottom of the table. There's a couple of teams there. The Rabbitohs are another one. There's a lot of teams that are down the bottom of the table that you wouldn't really expect. Now South, obviously, we're going to have 4, losing Adam Reynolds, losing Dane Gagai, Jaden Stewart, another one. Whereas Manly have basically got the exact same side, except Tom Trbojevic is actually there to start the season, and they haven't got the wins. And it's not necessarily that they haven't got the wins, but it's just sort of how they played. Now, let's take into account who they actually played. They took on the Penrith Panthers, who, yes, they don't have Nathan Cleary, but they just won the bloody premiership. So that one's a bit of a write-off. I can understand losing to them. Sydney Roosters, they did get beat by the Knights. Knights have actually shown themselves to be quite a team this year, and they actually got beat quite well, but they came out and they beat Manly pretty convincingly as well. But they came out red hot and fired up, essentially, after losing the previous week. So the Roosters were red hot. I'm going to write that one off as well. Manly may be on the bottom of the table, but this is not the same video that I did last year, despite how I sort of started it. Manly in a way better position. Obviously, we know what they're capable of, and to me, it does scream 2021. Against the shittier sides, against sort of even just the mid-range sides, Manly pummeled them. Manly were really, really good. It was when they took on the top notch, the top echelon of teams, like your Panthers, like your Roosters, that's when they actually did struggle. So I think this sort of fits with the narrative that Manly, they just don't have that killer instinct against those sides, but they can have the killer instincts against teams like the Bulldogs, who they played this week. So, as a Bulldogs fan, it does scare me coming up against Manly. 2 losses in a row. Obviously, we had a very tight loss to the Broncos. A bit controversial, but hey, Broncos got the job done. They're 2 from 2. We've won 1 game, which puts us in a way better position than previous years, but Manly, they're going to have something to prove. Definitely a point to prove, I should say. And I'm thinking it's going to be a long, long night on Sunday when the Bulldogs take on Manly. I feel like Manly will come out. I think they'll play really well. And I think they'll do this against teams like the Bulldogs. I think they'll be able to put the sword in. And I think they'll be able to put a bit of a score on us, possibly. I mean, I hope not. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the Bulldogs really compete. But just with how Manly have played, they've looked absolutely terrible. But like I said, you've got to take into account who they're actually taking on. I know the title of this video says, are they the worst team in 2022? Statistically, yes, because they are coming last, but by no means are they a team like, say, like the Tigers, or even some teams who have got wins. Like the Cowboys going to win against the Raiders, but like the Raiders at this point, are they possibly the worst team? I mean, with the injuries that they've got, Hodgson's gone down. Obviously, Fogarty is out. Even the backup guy didn't even play last week. And they ended up getting beat by the Cowboys. Does that reflect that the Cowboys are not as bad as the Raiders? Not necessarily. I feel like the Cowboys still are. I mean, Cowboys got a lot of stars. It's so hard early on in the season to predict things, to make tips, despite so many people picking the round. I mean, last week I definitely saw a few people who picked the round. This week I saw a few people who picked the round. I'm like, mate, how are you picking these? But then at the same time, like, Manly losing wasn't a surprise, you know what I mean? So, look, there's a few games that could have went either way, but for the most part, like, Manly losing to the Panthers, Manly losing to the Roosters, not exactly an upset. Now, the Knights beating the Roosters, that is definitely an upset. Knights winning in general this year is a bit of an upset, but maybe not so much going forward. But so far, like, this season has been very, very weird. I know it's only 2 rounds in, but just the results, they're so hard to get a read on. I mean, even looking at the trials, I feel like we've never looked at trials the way we have this year. Usually, we just look at the trials and go, oh, I don't really care. Doesn't matter if my team lost, but because there was so much coverage of it, and the Fox Sports analysts were actually taking it serious, and even to this day, they still bring up, oh, wow, who's really good in the trials, and oh, you should have seen them do this and that in the trials. And it's like, mate, no one's ever cared about trials up until this year. Now you got Cooper Cronk acting like it's a grand final. It baffles me, but that's all we can really go off, the trials and 2 games. And based off that, I don't think there is a clear standout. I mean, like the Eels, I thought they looked really good in round 1, looked good in the trials, come out last week, got beat by the Sharks. Sharks had so much promise in terms of all the signings, and in round 1 it didn't really show it. Round 2 they hit back and they end up beating the Eels. It's very hard to get a read on, but I think, you know, maybe 10 rounds in we'd be able to sort of understand where teams are. But for Manly, in terms of them and people writing them off, I don't think anyone is actually writing them off. I'll make that clear. I don't think anyone actually is, but there is a bit of talk about whether Manly are just playing shit, and I think they are playing shit, but it's also the competition that they're coming up against. They've come up against two of the best sides. You can argue that they're the top two sides, the Roosters and the Panthers at the moment. I know Knights and a few others sitting up there, but these two are probably going to be two of the top teams come the end of the season, adding the Storm there as well. And look, I think the Manly side will be fine going forward, but they definitely need to pick it up soon. Like, they can't leave it too long because, like I said, the season does seem very open. We're seeing teams like the Knights who've come out and showed a lot of good form. Obviously, the Sharks a lot better, Bulldogs a lot better, Broncos 2 from 2. There's a lot of good sides this year who sort of are a chance of making the 8. So Manly don't want to leave it too long before they start firing up. Add in the top 4 as well if they want to make that and actually be a chance of winning the comp and not just make up the numbers. They need to make the top 4. So getting off to a start like this isn't exactly ideal, but hey, Manly did it last year. They can probably do it again this year. I wouldn't write them off when Tom Trbojevic is playing. I know what's going to be said about Tommy Turbo and how he hasn't scored 7 billion tries in the first 2 rounds, but like I said, he's taken on the teams that did this to him last year as well. Panthers did it last year, and basically all the top 4 sides did it to him last year. They were able to shut down Tom Trbojevic, therefore shutting down the Manly side. The one thing I will say though is, I feel like Tommy carried a lot of players last year because of the rule changes, and I feel like the rule changes they've sort of gone back on. There's not too many 6 again calls compared to previous years. Obviously, the penalty happens if it's inside the 40, whatever it is. It is a little bit of a different game, and I feel like Manly benefited greatly last year because Tommy was able to take on these tiring defenders, and they're not as tired this year. They're definitely not as tired. Even towards the back end of last year, they sort of eased up on the rules a little bit. But yeah, look, I think with the back line they've got some good wingers, but the centers are a bit of a weakness for me, and I feel like there's only so much you can do with them. Like, if everything's going good, they're good. But if the times are tough, I don't exactly expect Morgan Harper and Brad Parker to get them out of trouble. It's just, I don't know, just not there. And a lot of other sides don't really have these gun centers, but Manly in particular are very, very weak compared to the rest of the back line, compared to the rest of the side. Like, you look at their 1 to 7, you got Trbojevic, you got Garrick, you got Saab, you got Kieran Foran, been around for years, you got Cherry Evans, who's the Australian captain at the moment, and then you got Morgan Harper and Brad Parker. Now, Brad Parker's proved himself over the years, but Morgan Harper really got shown up in the finals last year, and look, they just don't have that killer instinct that I was talking about. So when you're going up against some of these absolute guns that Penrith have got, like your Stephen Crichtons, then you come up against the Roosters and you take on your Joey Manus and that's just where the class sort of shines a little bit with them, where Tom Trbojevic can't just run through them and they need something from someone else, and they've really got a lot else to work with. So that is something Manly need to work on, find some other options other than Trbojevic, but in terms of them being done this year, definitely not. Anyways, that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. A bit of a short one, short and sweet, get to the point. Hopefully you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure you go ahead and smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Also, make sure that you do use the notification bell. I know it is a little bit dodgy, but use the notification bell. Never miss any of my videos, never miss any of my streams. Also, go ahead and give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke and YT for the most part. My Facebook's Mr. Luke, but everything else, including Snapchat, including TikTok, is Mr. Luke and YT. Twitch is Mr. Luke Streams. Go ahead and give me a follow on that. Been streaming on there a little bit more, doing some dual streams of YouTube and Twitch. So go ahead and do that. And stay tuned for more content on the channel. Got plenty of stuff to talk about. Might be talking about Manly soon. Maybe I'll be talking about them actually being the worst team. Maybe I'll talk about them pummeling the Dogs. Maybe the Dogs get the win. Who knows? But stay tuned for that. And I'll see you on the next one. See yous.